The next chapter of Geronimo Stilton, The Volcano of Fire. This chapter is called Blah, Blah, Blah. I made it to the room of great thinkers and burst inside. The circular room was lined with tall bleachers where many wise and serious thinkers from all over the kingdom of fantasy had gathered. There were scientists, mathematicians, volcanologists, geologists, witchologists, ogreologists, trollologists, and even know-it-allologists. It was just like Thunderhorn had said. I was so busy looking around I didn't notice an owl with enormous glasses approaching me. Who are you?" he demanded. The crowd turned to stare at me with suspicious eyes. My fur turned red with embarrassment. I am Sir Stilton of Geronimo. Sir Geronimo Stilton, and I have a magnificent question. A question for Professor Magnificent. A Professor Longwind question, I babbled. Oh, why do I turn into such a blithering fool when I get nervous? Finally, I took a deep breath and shouted, "I have a question for the magnificent Professor Longwind." At that moment, a man's thin face poked out from behind a large desk that was piled high with books. He was wearing a long, dark robe and the same open book hat that the guards had on their heads. The only difference was his hat was made out of gold. He leaned toward me and said in a bored voice, "Questions, questions, always more questions." Just then, the wise owl flew over to the desk and began complaining to the professor. "You know, Chancellor, it's getting late," he said. "Maybe we should call it a night. There's always tomorrow, and the next day, and the next month, and the next year." But the professor just brushed him aside. He picked up a wooden mallet and hit it hard against the desk. Bang! "Continue with your question, Sir Knight," he demanded. So I told him about the earthquakes that were destroying the kingdom of fantasy. "Why are they happening?" I asked. Immediately, all of the experts in the room began to talk at the same time. Then they began to argue with each other, then shout. I felt a giant headache coming on. Finally, Professor Longwind picked up his mallet and slammed it down. "Silence!" he shrieked. When the room settled down, he cleared his throat and said, "Friends, esteemed colleagues, and our visitor from afar, I will be brief." Unfortunately, the professor's idea of brief was more like never ending. "The knight needs to know the cause of these earthquakes, and since he's in a rush, we will follow the urgent procedures for urgent answers to urgent questions. Everyone will get a chance to speak, but be brief and wait your turn. I will start. Now, as you know, the kingdom of fantasy has never had earthquakes until now, but according to the sudden shake theory, there may be tremors because of something has frightened the land. Or, according to the hiccupisms theory, the kingdom may have quakes because it has the hiccups. Or if you follow the chuckles theory, it's because we plow the fields, we are tickling them." He continued to explain ridiculous theories until I fell asleep. He was blabbing on, blah, 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 blah. Earthquakes. In the real world, earthquakes occur when two plates that form the Earth's crust, similar to very large blocks of land, suddenly slip past each other, releasing energy and shaking the ground above. Oh, all this page is blah 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 blah. And see, Geronimo's falling asleep. All right, guys. Well, that chapter certainly was filled with a lot of blahs. Next chapter is called Did Someone Say Thunderhorn? Until next time, guys. Bye.